Okay, hey everybody. I thought after reading posts for a couple days, it might be fun to just talk about some things. To hear my voice. I'm sure you've missed it over the last couple days, but we're going to go through just some performance considerations for the Liberty Bell March. I hope you watch a video of Laura Schissel doing his presentation with the Army Band. Loris is a scholar when it comes to all things Sousa, so I hope that was helpful. If you haven't watched it, you start that up at about the 36-minute point. The whole thing's great, but really about 25 minutes from 36 minutes to about the 1 hour mark is when he discusses the Liberty Bell and they perform that. So anyway, so I've got the PDF file. Hopefully you downloaded your part. If you're going to do that on an iPad or something, most Preview and a bunch of the different apps have the ability to mark up. You can use your finger on a tablet to mark up the part, so this way you can make these notes. So anyway, at the beginning of the score there's a little bit of history. There's a little bit of a discussion of the editorial aspects, which I'm going to go over. And then there's some performance considerations that we'll talk about. These are all part of the file that was available on Tuesday's post, so you can go through there and read through this on your own. I'm not going to take time to read through it for you, but we are going to go here and we're going to go ahead and look at some of these parts here, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here, and I've got some notes prepared. So, oh, what happened there? I guess it popped out of view. Anyway, so real quick, in the introduction, measures 1 to 4, the first 2 bars are going to be in a legato style with a lot of emphasis on the quarter notes and a little less emphasis on the eighth notes. Da 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 dee, da da. And then measures 3 and 4 are going to be detached with the last note kind of choked off, so we hear the silence right here on that eighth rest and quarter rest. Okay, and all of that's going to be played fortissimo. And really the introduction ends on the downbeat of bar 4. Okay, and then at letter A we get into what we call the first strain. So here's the first of the editorial things. You'll notice that there's some dynamics in parentheses. That's going to be different from brackets. But if you notice that on the downbeat of A, there's some piano marks in parentheses, but then there's another P that appears before it that's not marked. And what's happening here is kind of the shorthand way of doing it is back in the day, they would just write the piano at A, and everybody would understand that the note before it was a pickup and should be in the same style. But what this editorial edition did, when the Marine Band did the edition in 2016, they placed the P when you actually start playing piano. So that's why there's 2 markings there. The first one is where you should really start playing it, and then the second one here, in parentheses, is the original way it was notated in the original Sousa edition. So that's in the parentheses. Brackets we're going to see a little bit later, and that was discussed a little bit on the video how that worked out. So let's see, the crescendo in 7. Let's take a look at 7 here. Make sure that it leads to the long note and then decays. Da, 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 dee, da, 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 dee, and leads to the longer note if you have that part. Or if you are one of the other parts here, like the horn part, same thing. Da, 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 dee, and continue all the way through with the dotted half note. If we go to the next page here, in 16, measure 16, we want to make sure that the crescendo up to forte, and then it stays forte for the last couple of bars. So it's rise, swell, rise, swell, rise, swell, and then the last time, stay strong. Okay? And then the stinger here in the first ending, that's going to be forte, but you have to make sure that when you come back, that you observe the piano. Okay? So it's a subito piano on the return. So you got to make sure you do that. Don't overplay the next measure on the repeat. Now, that pretty much takes care of this. Fairly straightforward, straight ahead. And here now we go into the first of the bracketed situation. This is really confusing. If you look at the first end, you're like, am I supposed to play loud? Am I supposed to play soft? Am I supposed to play at all? So I hope to give you some clarity there. The dynamics in the brackets are editorial additions that was common performance practice in Sousa's era. So if you've got the piano mark in a bracket, that was added in by the editors to say to play that note soft. So that's different than the parentheses. The parentheses are kind of like corrections. These were editorial changes based on Sousa's standard practice. So let's look at this. Why does it say piano and forte? Well, first of all, if you're going to, it's forte if you're going to play the second time. So some of this says second time only. If you were going to play this forte, then the pickup would also be forte. But we're going to actually observe the piano mark. So and we're going to also observe the tacit. So the piccolo and the E-flat clarinet and the trumpets and the trombones and the cymbals are also, they're not going to play the whole first time. And then everybody else is going to play piano the first time through. Okay? 1x, if you see here, 1x, 2x, 1x is first time, 2x is second time. So it might say second time only, for example. Tacit, clearly, I think you know means don't play. So once again, the first time at letter B, all the woodwinds are going to play except for the piccolo and the solo and first clarinet parts. They'll play, but they'll play an octave lower. They'll play the lower notes there. Everybody, there will be no cornets, no trombones, no cymbals. Everybody's going to play piano. And then in 29 to 33, everybody's going to crescendo that's playing up to mezzo forte. We're going to observe the first of these two dynamic marks. We're going to go from piano to mezzo forte. Okay? The second time, starting here in the first ending with the fortissimo mark that says play, that's when we're all in. So now everybody's back in at that point. So when you see two markings, if you see it say piano mezzo forte, the first time is piano, and the second time would be mezzo forte. So why then, if that's the case, then why are there two marks in the trumpet and trombone part if they only play one time? Well, the answer to that was also in the video. If the band doesn't have enough players that the woodwinds could sustain the melody on their own, maybe there's only a few clarinet players, they don't have enough to carry the melody, then you might have the trumpets play. And if they did, they'd play piano. So that's kind of why that's written out. It's a little confusing. You have to be pretty diligent about your parts, when to play, when not to play, and what the common practice is. So that pretty much covers most of the stylistic, dynamic considerations, the tacit considerations. So do go over your part, look at it carefully, make sure you're playing when you're supposed to be playing, because it's going to be a problem for the recording if you're playing when you're not supposed to be playing. Okay, and now we're on to the next section of the piece, which is the trio section. Now the trio section, first before we get there, notice we do have a piano pickup, a subito piano pickup in a lot of the voices. The trumpets and trombones are going to be tacited again. But if we look here, here's the trio section. Clarinets, once again, are going to play the lower notes. And then we've got some taciting, again, in the trombones and trumpets on the last page. Some things to notice about the trio of a march. It's the third section. First strain, second strain, third section. It also often includes a key change. So it goes to the key of the subdominant, which basically means that whatever the fourth degree of the scale was of the original key, now we're in that key. So this piece started out in concert F, and now we're in the trio, and it's going to concert B flat. So it's going to either add a flat or lose a sharp. That's the most common trio configuration. And then the same rules apply as to the second strain pretty much in terms of who's tacitting which. I kind of already went over that. So once again, I just want to review the dynamics. The brackets are edited marks. So here, for example, should we crescendo to mezzo piano or should we crescendo to forte? Well, mezzo piano is a little more accurate. Sousa was kind of just right. I'm going to throw piano, I'm going to say get louder and then get softer. But that's like a little bit too much. So a more appropriate dynamic would be to crescendo to the bracketed ones. So the bracketed ones are the ones that prevail. And then the second dynamic, that was the original marking, but that's just too much. So this trio section is a little bit low-key. It's a change of style. And we don't want to have any bombastic crescendos. We're just going to go to mezzo piano and back down, just like a little bit through there. So this whole trio section here, again, which is a contrasting section, is going to be completely nothing above mezzo piano. All right? Then we're going to get to letter E. So letter E is the section called the dogfight. So this is going to be where the two sections of the group, in this case the high voices and the low voices, are having a dialogue between each other, and it gets exciting. First thing I want to do is call your attention to a little bit of a mistake. So I'm going to pinch zoom real quick here if I can get any. It's about as big as I can get here. This forte mark in the trombone part, it is displaced, and in the tuba part, it should really be over the first eighth note in the bar. Da, 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 all of those are fortissimo. So what you'd want to do is you'd want to move that over and play. When you come in, you're going to come in at fortissimo. So you've been taciting, tuba hasn't been taciting. But that third eighth note beat, or the first eighth note in the measure, that is supposed to be where the fortissimo mark is. So it's a little bit of an engraving error that I picked up on. You'll notice later on when this comes back, then it's corrected. So in the dogfight, we talked about that. Cornets and the percussion come back in at E. So their percussion is laid out except for the chime part. And now everybody's back in at E. Everybody's fortissimo. We're going to play the bracketed dynamics, including getting to mezzo forte at 91. So let's take a peek at 91. We're going to drop down slightly. We've been chugging along at fortissimo for a while. And obviously, if we're already at fortissimo, there is not a lot of room to grow. So we're going to drop to mezzo forte. We're going to grow it back up. And then we're going to go and do a fairly dramatic diminuendo into the pickup to F, which is called the final strain. And once again, we've got some taciting going on. This time the E-flat clarinet is taciting. Cornets and trumpets are taciting again. And the cymbal is taciting. So we're not going to hear any cymbal that time, the first time through the first strain. All right. And then this section is going to be played piano. So it's contrasting to what just came from the dogfight. And everybody that's playing is going to be piano, and all the crescendi are only going to go up to mezzo forte and back down through this section. Okay? And then, after we do that a little bit, we get to letter H. We're back to the dogfight round 2. So now we get to hear the dogfight section again. This time, the fortissimos are all in the right spot, trombones and tubas. So they did it right the second time. And this time, all of the crescendos at forte to have some room to grow. So it's marked fortissimo, right? And then everything's chugging away fortissimo. It's pretty bold. So there's some crescendos in the drums. But then here, right, we're going to drop down to mezzo forte once again to give it some room to grow. Otherwise, we don't have anywhere to go. So it's got to drop down suddenly, and then crescendo back up, pick up fortissimo. Okay, and then that's kind of same thing happens to the end too. These 4Ks here weren't marked in the original spot because Sousa's players knew that they had to drop down before a crescendo. But for the sake of consistency, the editors here put those in to show you and remind you to drop down. So again, bracketed notes rule, bracketed dynamics rather rule, they are the ones we're going to perform. And that basically takes us to the end of the piece. The last 10 measures are all at fortissimo, and we want to have some nice resonance on the last note. Should sound crisp, but it should have some ring to it. Miss Wheeler says that let the note have some ring. I'm going to borrow that from her. And that takes us through the piece. Some percussion considerations. Percussionists, some of you guys have drum kits. Obviously, it's not the same as recording on concert equipment, but we don't have access to that. So I'm going to trust that our percussion section does what they need to do to make the very best recording they can. You could certainly submit separate tracks if you don't feel like trying to play bass drum and snare drum. You could try to get the best sound out of the bass drum. I'd encourage you to experiment a little bit if you have a bass drum and a drum kit at home. I know at least a few of you must. Snare drum, if you don't, play on a drum pad. Hopefully enough of you have bell kits that we can get a nice bell part. It won't be the same as having it on Parsifal bells or chimes like at school. And then the bell plate, there's that bell plate part that I think Charvy was talking about in the discussion board. Maybe find something resonant that you can hit that's metal. Get creative. Find something around the house that's metal that gets a good ring to it. And maybe that can work. So there's some options there. I might do another video with some mic considerations, but just to share some quick notes in preparation for your recording. Make sure you test it a few times to get the best sound. So don't try recording the whole thing. I did a couple takes of this to make sure it was recording properly. So make sure, unlike your videos, this is going to be for public consumption. My goal is to put this out there. It's public domain. There's no reason why we can't publish a Sousa March. It may be possible to adjust the input level on your recording device. So if you want to record this, for example, in your GarageBand app, if you have an iOS device, there's a way to change the input level. So if it's a little too hot, always better record on the softer side with digital recording. We can always raise it up with digital. If you overdrive it and distort it, it's a lost, wasted take. So make sure, if anything, record it a little bit on the softer side. Find the loudest part you're going to play, record that, listen back. If it gets fuzzy and broken up, you recorded it too loudly. You're going to have to either lower the input level, or you're going to have to play off the mic a little bit, or turn the microphone on the device so it's not quite, do what you have to do. You might want to play the part, because you're going to have to play along with the track, and you're going to have to stay in time with the track. So it might be easiest to just use a second device. Use somebody else's phone, or use a computer to listen to the track with headphones. Got to be with headphones. And then record yourself on a separate device. I'm just going to line up the initial attack of everybody in Logic Pro. So I'll trim off the beginning. Don't give me 10 minutes to trim off. But I'll trim off the beginning and line everything up. So you have to use tempos, and then you have to match the tempo, you have to match the pitch of the original recording. So that's going to require some discipline to play to a click. Otherwise it's just not going to work. You're going to have to do this in one take. So if you make a mistake, you're going to have to start over again. There's not going to be any way to edit this. And just don't submit it with takes, because that's just going to kind of screw up everybody's recording. Formats, I can handle just about any audio format. I can handle M4A, MP4, MP3, WAV file, just about any standard audio format I should be fine with. So that's about it. If you have any questions, email me. Hope this was helpful. I'm looking forward to this. Seems like kind of a fun project. And everybody stay healthy, wash your hands, and talk to you soon.